Okay, so for 9.4 in Honors Algebra 2, we're on the irrational expressions. The two key questions we have: how do you simplify rational expressions, and how do you multiply and divide rational expressions? I'm going to split this one up into 3 parts. First part is just doing the simplifying rational expressions, and multiplying will be its own section, dividing will be its own section. Looking at just simplifying, we did some of this back in chapter 6 when we were looking at equations or expressions such as x squared y to the 4th divided by x y squared. And we did some shortcuts and just saw that if you subtract your exponents, that will simplify. 2 minus 1 is 1, so we have 1x. 4 minus 2 is 2, so we have y squared. But if we look at why this is happening, look at how we can rewrite the expression. X squared is x times x, and y to the 4th is y, multiplying all the way across. Down below in the denominator we have x, and then y squared is y times y. Now what we're going to look for is when we divide, if we divide by the same numerator and denominator, we get 1. So anytime it's x divided by x, it's going to simplify to 1. And that's what happens for most of these expressions. X over x simplifies to 1. Y over y over y. They turn to 1. We say they cancel out because when you multiply, it's the identity when you multiply by 1, and we're left with a single x. 2 y's gives you y squared, which is the same thing. Okay, so that's what's happening here. And when we, in this section 9.4, we're going to be doing the same thing. Unfortunately, the expressions get a little nastier. X squared plus 10x plus 25 divided by x squared plus 9x plus 20. We're not going to have to factor these out. The x squared that we just had, that was easy. You could just write x times x. Here we have to know how to factor these trinomials. So that's why I've been saying, the better you are factoring, the easier this chapter is going to be. So that's the first step, is factoring the numerator and denominator. The next step, I'm going to ask you to list the restrictions. The restrictions are values that x cannot be. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And the last step is dividing out the common factors. So I'm hoping we can factor this fairly easy. We have x squared plus 10x plus 25. Factoring that expression, hopefully you're looking at the last term, the constant, and thinking, what factors of 25 add up to 10? 5 and 5, so we have x plus 5, x plus 5. For the factors of 20 that add up to 9, we have 5 and 4. X plus 5, x plus 4. So there's our factored form. Okay, so step 1 is done. Step 2, listen to restrictions. The restrictions are values that x cannot be. Now remember, when you have a fraction, if you divide by 0, it's an undefined term. So we have to think of what terms or what x values cannot be plugged into x. So we need to think, x plus 5 cannot equal 0. So set it equal. X plus 5 equals 0. X plus 4 equals 0. And solving those will tell us what x cannot be. Subtract your 5, you get negative 5. Subtract your 4, you get negative 4. So our restrictions, x cannot equal negative 4. X cannot equal negative 5. They're the two values that x cannot be. You plug those in, you're going to get 0 in the denominator. Okay, so there's our restrictions. And now, looking at that factored form, step 3, divide out the common factors. And just like before those x's and y's, where's the top and bottom the same? Okay, x plus 5, canceled out. And we're left with x plus 5, x plus 4. So there's really going to be 2 parts to each answer for these ones. You have your expression, which is simplified now, x plus 5 over x plus 4, and we have our restrictions. X cannot be negative 4, x cannot be negative 5. Okay? 3 steps: factor, numerator, and denominator, list the restrictions, divide out the common factor. And there's second example, 2x squared minus 3x minus 2 over x squared minus 5x plus 6. Now, that numerator, that can be a little trickier. Since we have a leading coefficient that's not 1, it's not horrible to show this work. So I'm going to do this work for it. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Factors are negative 4 and 1 that add up to our negative 3. 2x squared minus 4x plus 1x minus 2. If you group that work, take out a 2x, gives you x minus 2. Take out a 1, you get x minus 2. And up top, we're going to have 2x plus 1 and x minus 2. So there is our numerator for that. Just some work back from chapter 5. This one here, factors of 6 that add up to negative 5 would be negative 2 and negative 3. X minus 2, x minus 3. So there's factored form there. There's the expression we're going to look at. First, I'm going to figure out my restraints. We're going to take out x minus 2 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0, 2, and 3. So our restraints here, x cannot equal 2, x cannot equal 3. And now I'm going to start canceling stuff out. We have x minus 2, x minus 2. They're going to cancel out, and we're left with 2x plus 1 divided by x minus 3. There's the expression. There's our restraints. So again, a little trickier to factor here. We had to show a little bit of work for this one, okay? But we still got it done, canceled everything out, we found our restraints. Do one more example. This time a little different factor. We have 2 terms up top. Think about how we have to factor. We have to remember all of our skills of factoring, what we need to do. We have 2x cubed minus 50x in the numerator. Denominator, we have 3x cubed plus 21x squared plus 30x. So I'm going to start over here, start working with that top expression. 2x cubed minus 50x. I'm going to take out a 2x. Okay, greatest common factor, 2x, and I'm left with x squared minus 25. So there's 2 terms there, okay? Perfect squares, there's subtraction, this is difference of squares. In our numerator, I'm going to have 2x, x minus 5, x plus 5. Remember how I'm doing, I'm taking the square root of both that x and the 25. A is x, b is 5. Okay. I'm going to go over here to the other side and work on that 3x cubed plus 21x squared plus 30x. I'm going to take out a 3x to start with. And I'm going to be left with x squared plus 7x plus 10. Okay, so now there's a trinomial, no leading coefficient. The leading coefficient's 1. 10 is going to be 5 and 2. So this is going to be x plus 5, x plus 2. So let's put all that underneath over here. We have 3x, x plus 5, x plus 2. Now this time we're looking at our restraints. There are 3 pieces down here. Each piece needs to be set to 0. 3x equals 0, x plus 5 equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0. And we end up with 0, negative 5, negative 2. X cannot equal 0, cannot equal negative 5, and cannot equal negative 2. Now, crossing some things out, a little different here. We have our x plus 5 and our x plus 5. We also have 2x over 3x. 2 and 3 can't cancel out, but x over x can cancel out. So I'm going to cancel that out, and now let's rewrite this. I'm left with 2x minus 5, 3x plus 2. And if you want to distribute that 2, distribute the 3, go ahead. I'm not going to ask you to do that. That's a fine answer if you want to leave that. 2 times x minus 5 divided by 3x plus 2. There's our simplified expression, and here are our restraints. I'll do one more example that's slightly different than what we've seen so far. Get rid of all that. And here we have negative 27x cubed y divided by 9x to the fourth y. Kind of like what we saw in chapter 6. What we didn't have to do in chapter 6 is list the restraints. That's kind of why I want to have this example. We should be able to simplify it, but I want to know 9x to the fourth y. What can x not be? So we have to think multiplying. What do you multiply by that will always give you 0? And the answer to that is 0. X cannot be 0, and y cannot be 0. So just a different rule to think about. Same concept. Denominator cannot have a 0 in it. Cannot be 0. It gets an undefined term. So we have to think 9x to the fourth y. What can those variables not be? The simplifying we should be able to handle from chapter 6. Negative 27 over 9 gives us negative 3. 3 minus 4 is negative 1. Since it's negative, I'm putting in denominator. It's going to the bottom, and those y's cancel out. There's our expression, and there's our restraints. So that's the first part of 9.4.